And so everybody I work with was very close to Frank. And there's not a day that goes by that.
Mike Wolfe and Frank Fritz were once the iconic pair at the heart of the hit reality TV series American Pickers. Since its debut on the History Channel in 2010, the show quickly drew in millions of viewers with its relatable storytelling, authentic content, and the genuine camaraderie between its two hosts. More than just a show about hunting for antiques, American Pickers was a celebration of friendship, a love for history, and the preservation of American culture through forgotten relics. For over 10 years, audiences became familiar with the side of Wolfe and Fritz journeying across the United States. Wolfe was often seen as the strategic force behind the show, handling client relations, leading negotiations, and steering the brand's growth. In contrast, Fritz brought hands-on expertise, especially in mechanical items, license plates, and vintage household goods. This difference in strengths gave the show a unique dynamic. However, tensions quietly began to rise behind the scenes. What started as small disagreements over work styles grew deeper. Wolfe focused on expanding the brand's commercial reach, while Fritz clung to the traditional values of collecting. As the show gained popularity, Wolfe slowly assumed full control over its direction and public image, often making key decisions without involving Fritz. Eventually, Frank found himself increasingly sidelined. Things worsened when Fritz had to take a medical leave due to serious health issues, including heart disease, spinal complications, and later, a stroke. By season 21, Frank had nearly vanished from the show. Despite his public support for Wolfe, there was no effort made to reinstate him or adapt the schedule to accommodate his recovery. The show carried on with Wolfe as the sole host. In later interviews, Fritz shared that he felt left out and was no longer kept informed about show developments. Wolfe stopped reaching out, and Frank had to learn about changes from others. Some former colleagues claimed Wolfe had spoken critically of Fritz's performance and quietly used his health as a pretext to exclude him. It became increasingly clear that Fritz's departure wasn't just due to health problems, it was the result of a calculated removal. The rift grew even more apparent when Wolfe registered the American Pickers brand under his own company and launched products under his personal branding. While he expanded the franchise, Fritz was cut off from any revenue or rights to the brand he had helped build. What was once a cooperative partnership had turned into silent opposition. Fritz's prolonged absence triggered backlash from fans online, who felt the show had lost its original balance. He wasn't just a background player, his presence was a vital part of the show's identity. Despite this, the production team pressed forward with a Wolfe-centric format. While this may have seemed like a strategic decision, it was really the culmination of a power shift that began when Fritz's health started declining. With no public legal battles or statements, the change was quiet but significant. Still, it laid the foundation for a much more serious event. When Frank Fritz passed away, initially believed to be from natural health complications, many mourned the loss of a beloved television figure. But his death soon sparked deeper scrutiny. Fritz died one summer night in what first appeared to be a routine medical emergency. The hospital cited complications from a stroke, aligning with his known health conditions. The news, while tragic, didn't come as a complete surprise. Wolfe posted a heartfelt tribute online, which quickly spread and gathered thousands of reactions from longtime fans. However, days later, details from the autopsy report began raising questions. Toxicology results showed an unusually high concentration of fentanyl in Fritz's bloodstream, a strong prescription painkiller typically used only under strict medical supervision. His physician confirmed that fentanyl had never been part of his treatment. This discovery prompted a deeper investigation. Police found an unmarked medication bottle in Frank's nightstand, which bore Mike Wolfe's fingerprints. Further suspicion arose when surveillance footage showed Wolfe's vehicle near Fritz's home around 1 a.m., only 3 hours before emergency services were called. It was Wolfe who made the 911 call, claiming to have found Frank unresponsive. While his panicked tone during the call initially seemed genuine, inconsistencies later emerged. Investigators found discrepancies between Wolfe's account of Frank's condition and the forensic evidence from the scene. Authorities soon widened the investigation. A search of Wolfe's digital devices uncovered troubling internet activity, including searches like simulate stroke symptoms, lethal drug interactions, and how long does fentanyl stay in the system. These had been made in the weeks leading up to Frank's death, suggesting premeditation. A former crew member, still in touch with Frank, testified that Wolfe had been reaching out to Fritz in his final days under the guise of reconciliation. He visited often, expressed concern about medications, and even offered to help with care, behavior that Frank reportedly found intrusive. What seemed like concern took on a sinister tone when viewed alongside the accumulating evidence. Between the fentanyl, the unmarked bottle with Wolfe's prints, his unusual behavior, and his search history, police had enough to open a formal case. Wolfe was placed under surveillance while the investigation progressed. Public opinion, once full of sympathy, began to shift as suspicions about his involvement grew. The mystery surrounding Frank Fritz's death became a landmark case in the world of reality TV, drawing attention not only to the fallout of a beloved show but also to the darker side of fame, control, and betrayal. The investigation had officially begun, and the story that had played out quietly for years behind the camera was finally exposed. Details of the criminal prosecution surrounding the relationship between Mike Wolfe and Frank Fritz began to emerge. The investigation quickly shifted away from simply determining the cause of death and instead centered on uncovering the motive. Authorities began examining financial activity, intellectual property rights, and legal changes that occurred just prior to Frank's passing. Records from an Iowa law office revealed that 3 months before his death, Frank had signed a new will, leaving his entire estate, including real estate, antique collections, bank accounts, and rights to his likeness, to Mike Wolfe. The value of the estate was estimated at approximately $6 million. A particularly suspicious detail was that the attorney who helped draft Frank's will died not long afterward. Frank's father, William Fritz, quickly filed a petition in court to challenge the will's legitimacy, citing doubts about Frank's mental capacity at the time he signed it. Just 2 days following Frank's death, Mike Wolfe contacted 2 legal firms to begin transferring ownership of Frank's image rights and intellectual property linked to American Pickers. He also dispatched people to gain access to Frank's personal storage units, which were believed to contain rare antiques never seen publicly. The quick and calculated nature of these actions led investigators to suspect premeditation. Adding to suspicions was a $5 million life insurance policy taken out in Mike Wolfe's name, naming his company as the beneficiary. This policy had been signed shortly before Frank's death. Investigators also uncovered evidence that Wolfe had been quietly shifting the show's intellectual property into a series of shell companies under his control, without notifying production partners or the network. A police search of Wolfe's office, authorized by the court, uncovered a safe hidden behind a bookshelf. Inside were several unmarked bottles of medication, one of which contained a substance that matched the fentanyl found in Frank's bloodstream. The fact that Wolfe had no legal prescription for fentanyl made this discovery even more significant. During the same search, authorities also found a personal journal belonging to Wolfe. In it, several entries revealed resentment toward Frank and a desire to remove him from the picture. One entry stated, "He's just a burden now. I need to take back what's mine." Former American Pickers crew members provided further testimony reinforcing the investigators' conclusions. One production assistant said Frank had been excluded from filming by Wolfe, who claimed Frank no longer fit the show's image. Wolfe had total control over the production schedule, personally edited scripts, and pushed for reducing Frank's presence in reruns. These actions reportedly isolated Frank professionally and emotionally over time. Internal emails and text messages showed that Wolfe was planning to rebrand the show around himself as the sole figure, intentionally excluding Frank from promotional content. These developments painted a picture of someone carefully removing Frank from the show's narrative while laying the groundwork to inherit his assets and assume full ownership of the brand. Investigators ultimately concluded that Frank's death was inseparable from the escalating conflict over power and property between the show's co-founders. The motive was rooted in financial ambition, content control, and a desire for total dominance, factors that led to a series of deliberate steps ending in a tragic outcome. What began as a suspicious death evolved into a sprawling and complex legal case. The trial of Mike Wolfe drew intense public and media interest, particularly from longtime fans of American Pickers. Held at the Iowa State Courthouse, the trial charged Wolfe with first-degree murder, citing aggravating factors such as financial motive, intent, and attempts to hide evidence. The 6-week trial featured over 30 witnesses and an extensive collection of documents, digital files, and physical exhibits that recreated the events leading up to Frank's death. The prosecution centered its case on 3 major elements: the toxic substance found in Frank's system, clear signs of deliberate planning, and Wolfe's suspicious behavior after Frank's death. A forensic expert confirmed that the amount of fentanyl in Frank's body far exceeded therapeutic levels and could not be explained by normal usage. Frank's physician stated that he had never prescribed fentanyl, suggesting intentional poisoning. Investigators linked the unmarked bottle found in Wolfe's office to the toxic substance in Frank's system, with Wolfe's fingerprints on the bottle. Surveillance footage also placed Wolfe's vehicle at Frank's residence the night he died. Further incriminating data came from Wolfe's devices, which included search histories involving fentanyl, stroke simulation techniques, and how the drug breaks down in a body postmortem, evidence of premeditation in the weeks before Frank died. The prosecution read excerpts from Wolfe's journal describing jealousy and a goal to remove Frank from the show. One entry read, "If I can't control everything, I'll lose it all. He's coming back, and I need to block that right from the start." Financial records, the insurance policy, and company restructuring all supported the argument that Wolfe stood to benefit substantially from Frank's death. Several members of the production team confirmed that Wolfe had full authority over scripting and scheduling and had steadily phased out Frank's role. One key production staffer stated Frank wasn't even consulted in the show's final stages. Another recalled Wolfe openly discussing plans to permanently replace Frank in future seasons. Danielle Colby, a longtime collaborator, initially chose not to take sides but later testified against Wolfe. She described how he had threatened her when she questioned Frank's treatment and mentioned finding notes about Frank's medication schedule in Wolfe's office, something far outside her job description. The defense, in contrast, claimed Wolfe had been unfairly portrayed and had made efforts to reconcile with Frank. They presented instances of Wolfe publicly supporting Frank's potential return and providing him financial help during recovery. However, these claims were weakened when Frank's doctor testified that Frank had intended to return independently and was financially secure. Wolfe's immediate moves to claim assets and retrieve Frank's antique collections just days after the death cast further doubt on his intentions. The trial's dramatic turning point came when prosecutors brought up the $5 million insurance policy. Wolfe lost his composure, shouting and becoming physically aggressive, requiring courtroom security to remove him temporarily. Until that point, he had maintained a composed image. This emotional breakdown was seen by jurors as a revealing moment that exposed his true character. After just 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict, and Mike Wolfe was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. As he was escorted from the courtroom, he continued shouting, insisting he had been. The sense of betrayal was undeniable. Frank's contributions had been taken from him, and the trial concluded in a charged, uneasy atmosphere. It was one of the most dramatic and unsettling moments the reality TV industry had seen in years. Frank's family, drained by the lengthy legal battle, and former colleagues of Mike Wolfe quietly exited the courtroom. With Wolfe receiving a life sentence, his once celebrated career in antique collecting came to a devastating end. The verdict also triggered the downfall of American Pickers, a show that had once stood for the appreciation and preservation of cultural history through vintage objects. Once admired for its educational and cultural value, American Pickers soon became a flashpoint for ethical concerns and a lack of transparency within reality television. Shortly after the trial, the History Channel announced it would stop broadcasting episodes featuring Wolfe and terminate all associated commercial activity. International broadcasting partners followed suit, canceling their agreements, which led to major financial losses across the content distribution network. While viewers largely supported the decision as a necessary step toward accountability, for those behind the scenes, it marked the conclusion of a nearly 15-year endeavor. Danielle Colby, a close associate of both Wolfe and Frank, declared her departure from the television world, saying the situation had deeply crossed professional boundaries. While some former crew members stayed silent, Others openly condemned Wolfe, accusing him of destroying years of teamwork and shared vision. Meanwhile, Frank Fritz's family continued legal efforts to regain control of his image, personal collection, and other assets that had been misused after his death. Controversially, Wolfe released merchandise, T-shirts, mugs, and prints featuring Frank's image, just days after the funeral. Financial documents later revealed that this merchandise earned over $1 million, most of which was funneled directly into Wolfe's personal accounts, bypassing any official charitable or memorial funds. Fans responded with outrage. Online communities, once devoted to antique collecting, erupted with criticism and calls for a complete boycott of Wolfe and anything associated with him. Many saw this not only as a betrayal of Frank but of the viewers' trust and the show's original mission. Some observers argued that the issue extended beyond Wolfe as an individual, pointing to a flawed production system that allowed him unchecked authority. As the dust settled, Frank's public image was re-evaluated. Despite his flaws, he was now seen as someone who had stayed true to his passion and had always been genuine with the audience. In the wake of the trial, numerous tributes were created, articles, videos, and commemorative works, recognizing Frank's role in spreading a love for antique culture throughout the country. Cultural preservation organizations also weighed in, urging television companies to rethink their practices around content ownership, ethics, and creator rights. They called for clearer standards in the non-fiction TV industry to prevent similar abuses of power in the future. The case of Mike Wolfe became a cautionary tale for the entire field, showing just how easily passion can be corrupted when ambition and profit take precedence over integrity. Although American pickers may never return, Frank's impact lives on. His family plans to archive and exhibit his antique collection in his hometown as a tribute to his legacy. To many, Frank represented the heart of the show, someone who lived by his values, even if he was ultimately betrayed by the very industry he helped build.